Hey folks, welcome to Unqualified, the fantasy football podcast that's been overpromising and underdelivering since 2017. I'm your producer, Rod Diesendorf, here with co-hosts Sean Brady and Scott Johnson, two fantasy football rivals that have been sabotaging each other for years, but they decided to come together to help you win your league and make your friends look like idiots. How's it going, guys?
It's going fantastic.
Staying alive?
It's going fantastic. Just staying alive, not dying every day.
Wait, I got a joke for you. What did Matthew McConaughey say when he got a job at the New York Times?
All right.
Yeah!
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's not your best work.
What? What are you talking about? That's amazing. All right.
Oh, all right.
You get it?
I get it now.
Oh. You didn't get that?
No, I didn't get it. I just said it because that's like his most famous quote.
Oh, that's bad, guys. Come on.
What a stupid joke. No, I'm just kidding. That's pretty funny.
All right.
Thinker.
All right, so what's today's episode about, guys?
Today we're going to be talking about...
Today Scott's going to cut me off.
Way to go, guys.
Today we're going through the AFC East and some of the teams and players there, and I think we're going to get to the NFC East as well.
Hey everyone, we're extremely excited to start our divisional outlook episodes with the AFC East featuring our special guest and tortured Jets fan, Christian Frisoli. But we have some updates that we want to clarify before we get into the thick of things. So, Scott, take it away.
Yeah, so a couple of updates for the AFC East. There were a few things that happened in August that we want to get to and kind of preface this podcast so you're not confused as to what's going on. Ryan Tannehill in early August suffered a pretty serious knee injury, so it's looking like he might be out for the whole season. The Dolphins signed Jay Cutler to a one-year deal. Now he's reunited with his former offensive coordinator, Adam Gase, who's now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Not much is going to change in terms of the QB, the quarterback value on this Miami Dolphins team. Jay Cutler will probably have very similar stats to Ryan Tannehill, and not much is going to change in terms of the wide receivers and tight ends that he's throwing to. So overall, still a bye week fill-in guy now. So one of the guys that he's going to be throwing to, Jarvis Landry, this is a really small thing, but noteworthy nonetheless as it happened in August. Jarvis Landry is under investigation for a battery charge. There's a couple of criminal charges against him, so I don't think that they think it's anything that's going to go through, but something to keep on in the back of your mind here for Jarvis Landry, one of the wide receivers that on the Miami Dolphins. His value that we are going to get to probably doesn't change much considering, but still noteworthy. That's it for the Dolphins in terms of updates for the month of August. Buffalo Bills had one small thing happen as well before we get into this pod that we wanted to mention. So we're going to talk about the wide receiver position. We did not mention this guy coming up because he just signed with the team. So Anquan Bolden, the longtime Arizona Cardinal and Baltimore Raven wide receiver, who's up there in his 30s now, kind of past his prime, just signed with the Buffalo Bills. So in terms of his value, there's not going to be too much fantasy value. He used to be a fantasy beast in Arizona when he was there, but he's past his prime now. He's in his late 30s. He'll be their slot guy, which means he's like their third wide receiver, the third best wide receiver, behind Sammy Watkins and Zay Jones, the new rookie. So not too much fantasy value there, but again, noteworthy nonetheless.
Just an old washed-up punk.
Yeah, get back to me on that. I'll give one more quick update on the New York Jets here. So as of beginning of August as well, a lot of things happening in August in this division, AFC East. Quincy Enunwa, who we're going to talk about as their kind of de facto best wide receiver, is out for the year now. So pretty bad injury. We hope he's okay, but he's going to be out for all of 2017 and 2018, which basically means that our Darius Stewart, who is the rookie that the Jets drafted this year, will now probably be their best wide receiver, which in terms of fantasy value, what we discussed in this pod, it's not going to change much. But again, Quincy Enunwa out for the year, so do not draft him. His targets and yards and catches that he was slated to get will probably be distributed among Ardarius Stewart and Robbie Anderson, who's another wide receiver on the Jets that we'll get to. But there wasn't too much fantasy value in this position to begin with, but Quincy Nuna will not have any value this year.
What's his name? Quinoa? Jay Cutlery and Quinoa.
That's your food guys again. Anyway, that's our updates before we get into the AFC East.
All right, now we're going to get started on our next sequence of podcasts. Overall, this is our structure we're going for the next couple weeks. We're going to be highlighting each division and kind of hitting on the teams and the fantasy relevant players in each team. I think that's probably one of the easier ways to break down what we're talking about here when it comes to fantasy guys that you should be focusing on, especially when training camp starts to heat up. We'll be talking about some positional battles, some outlooks for guys, and a couple of sleepers here and there. So we're going to start with our hometown division of the AFC East, and I think it's only right to go worst to first. So we're going to start, unfortunately, with our hometown club, the New York Jets.
Gotta love them.
Gotta love them. They're such a lovable bunch of losers this year, and that kind of ties in with their QB right away. Josh McCown, as a person, I really like this guy. I saw an interview last year when he was with the Cleveland Browns. He got hurt. He was letting his teammates down. He felt terrible, and he was super emotional at the podium after the game. And I really like the guy. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a good professional. Honestly, someone that can probably teach a young quarterback a thing or two because he's seen a lot of NFL action, the last couple of years. But as my quarterback, and especially as my, he's not going to be my fantasy quarterback, but if he was, I would have zero confidence in this guy. He throws a ton of picks. The Jets have next to no weapons around him to help him out. He may be a garbage time option, but that's about the ceiling you're going to get with Josh McCown. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are a dumpster fire. They're going to be even worse this year. What were they, 3-13 last year?
Yep.
Yeah, 3-13. So I'm banking on 1-15 or 2-14. Josh McCown at the helm does not inspire any sort of confidence whatsoever. It feels like a Band-Aid that doesn't even reach around the cut that is the Jets. It's like that bad. But I think the move for them is
visual.
Yeah, thanks. Josh McCown is the Band-Aid, and they're going to see what they have in Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg, which I don't think either one of them are long-term solutions either, but this is a position to stay away from. In terms of the Jets and how they're going to do with any of those quarterbacks, none of them are the long-term solutions, and they could trickle into the wide receiver and tight end positions as well.
Yeah, when I take a look at the Jets as a whole, we've been kind of working on our top 40s on and off, me and you, the last couple of weeks, and there's not one Jet that I'm even considering putting in the top 40.
Exactly.
As far as fantasy relevance, the best you're going to get here is probably a flex guy, and that's probably the ceiling for most of these guys. Nothing too crazy, nothing super exciting. Bilal Powell is a nice player. Matt Forte, was phenomenal a couple years ago, but I'm not crazy about either of these guys this year. I think, Powell, maybe he's got a breakout year coming because, again, someone's going to have to move the chains for the Jets. But, I still am not super confident taking him, even as a flex guy. I think, there's definitely a low floor for him.
Yeah, with Forte, I mean, he's been in the league for 10 years now, which is ancient. It's an old man as a running back. He has a ton of wear and tear on him. I think technically he's still a starter, but it just feels like they're trying to give that backfield away to Powell as soon as possible. I just don't think Bilal Powell is ready for a full workload yet. I think he came on pretty strong at the end of last year. But this is a situation to monitor as of now. I don't think either one of them are viable flex starters or starters in general, or even flex guys at the beginning of the season. I think you gotta, if you draft Bilal Powell earlier, which you're going to earlier than Matt Forte, I think you have to have Matt Forte as a handcuff there. But it's just a kind of an ugly situation. I think they're gonna have to run it because they can't pass it at all with Josh McCown. So I think these guys will kind of vulture from each other, to be honest with you. I don't think either one will have too much fantasy relevance besides Powell being a flex guy if he has a starting job. That's about it.
One thing to keep an eye on is that both of these guys actually catch the ball out of the backfield very well. So even if the Jets do have to, chuck the ball to stay in games, or to try to get back in games, rather, maybe there's a little bit of sneaky value there. Again, I'm still, yes, I think Powell will emerge as the starter, but I still don't know if his ceiling's high enough for you to even risk where he's being drafted right now.
I think he's going way too early. He's going to like 60th overall. That's where you need like a home run running back 2 or 3. So I don't think you can risk Powell as a maybe flex guy at 60 overall. I think even if you went like 80th, I would still have to reconsider like taking him that early. He's just going way too early for me. I think Forte is going where he should, but if you're not going to get Powell, then why would you get Forte? I think Powell's the only guy with the upside there.
Yeah, the way I look at it before we move on to the wide receivers is it sounds like what you're saying is if you're going to have one, you got to have the other. And I don't think I want to have either one on my team. I definitely don't want to have both, because then there's two guys that you don't really feel excited about playing. Sitting on your bench, taking up bench space. So, personally, I'd probably staying away. I think it'll probably make it more enjoyable to watch them if I don't have one of the players, because then it'll just be a double whammy of disappointment. If I'm watching my team lose and watching a guy that I have on my fantasy team, put up donuts week in and week out, that's, something I don't really want to be involved in.
I always stay away from my hometown guys on my fantasy team too. I really don't draft players, even though like they haven't been worthy of even drafting lately the past couple of years. But little fantasy rule of thumb there for me. In terms of wide receivers, there's not much to talk about there either. We just got rid of Eric Decker. He's on Tennessee Titans now for a year contract. The only guy that can really step in to fill that void is Quincy Enunwa. Draft pick a couple of years ago, who had some sneaky value last year, but still wasn't consistent enough. And when Decker went down, he was the wide receiver 2 behind Brandon Marshall, and really didn't do much, to be honest. They did draft Ardarius Stewart in the 3rd round, who I think could have some sneaky value. If you look at like Keenan Allen a couple of years ago when he was a rookie, not a flashy guy, not like a Julio Jones or AJ Green type. I think they were drafted the same year, actually. So nothing flashy about Keenan Allen's game, but definitely had a ton of value, over 1,000 yards his rookie year, but very under the radar. I think that's the kind of situation Ardarius Stewart is kind of going into if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, I think if Stewart emerges as that like kind of de facto top target, which I would bet that he would. Maybe there's a little bit of value, but again, you're looking at maybe a flex. So there's a lot of risk with these guys because the floor is absolutely nothing. And the ceiling is not super high. So, my advice to, fantasy listeners out there, don't try to get cute with the Jets because they're going to be in garbage time. Still, I don't know if the ceiling is very high anyway. So it might not be worth the risk.
Yeah, and you're not just so we're on the same page, like you're not really drafting any of these guys. It's kind of a wait and see thing.
Yes.
I would say the one that has the most upside, you kind of know what Quincy Enunwa's ceiling is at this point. Ardarius Stewart is the unknown. Robbie Anderson, to a much lesser extent, he's not going to get too much playing time, but I would say as a waiver wire target to look at Ardarius Stewart, probably you would have to give him like 4 or 5 games to really see what his consistency will be like, but that could be a plug and play guy or pickup guy a couple weeks in. But other than that, I would stay away from them in terms of drafting. Same thing with the tight end position. We're probably going to feature it a little bit more than now that Chan Gailey's out as the offensive coordinator, but Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who has had a myriad of issues outside of the field, is the de facto starter, and he doesn't inspire any confidence. So I think that's another position to stay away from, especially on the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not drafting Seferian-Jenkins, but I actually think the opposite of you. I think there is a little bit of sneaky value here because if you remember Gary Barnidge a couple of years ago on the Cleveland Browns, kind of came out of absolutely nowhere to have a very good season as a tight end. I think he finished top 5 in the position for the season. The quarterback on that team is Josh McCown, so McCown's going to look inside. Seferian-Jenkins is absolutely humongous. I think he's like 6'6", 6'7", maybe. He's a humongous guy. And there is some talent there. It's not like he's, just a bum on the field. He just can't get himself on the field because he's always hurt, getting himself in trouble. So there's a little bit of sneaky value there. I would just probably keep my eye on him. I'm definitely not drafting him. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's the number 1 receiver on the Jets in terms of touchdowns this year.
I could see that. Yeah, I think what's his. So if he's the number 1 guy in terms of touchdowns on the Jets, which isn't saying much because not a lot of guys are going to score a lot.
Yeah.
What kind of value is he going to have compared to other tight ends? Do you think he could be like a bye week fill-in or what?
Yeah, I think the absolute max that you're going to get out of him this year is like a very low end tight end one. So if you like ignore the tight end position during your draft and you wind up taking a guy that's, admittedly very risky, that's very touchdown dependent, then maybe just keep your eye on Safarian Jenkins, because if he starts putting up games where he's, catching a couple touchdowns, you might want to take a look at him. But again, he's not going to be anywhere near the top tier of tight ends that put up yardage and are much more consistent. I think he's probably a touchdown dependent tight end 2 with maybe low end tight end 1 upside. So again, kind of a bye week fill in guy.
All right, fair enough.
And that's if things work out.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, that covers the last team in the AFC East, but we have a special treat for our viewers now.
Oh yeah,
we have a hometown fan. We'll give him a couple minutes to get into the zone here, but my good friend Christian from school has some hot takes on the Jets. Just as a fan, we're giving you the stats. We're giving you the information that you need to succeed in terms of the Jets, but we're going to get some hot takes on how we realistically think the Jets are going to do this year.
This episode of Unqualified is sponsored by Amazon Subprime. Hey y'all, it's me again, Jim. I'm back because the FDA shut down my business for like the free carton of eggs deal I had, or who knows what. That's a toot. But you see, what happened was I was giving away free eggs, but the eggs were out in the hot heat for too long, and people started to bad things. Also, I got in a fist fight with my mailman because he was boinking my ex-wife, who she also works at the post office, but yeah, I guess I didn't need to tell you that last part, but anyways, Amazon Subprime is going to be temporarily not able to deliver your packages, so I will send you a letter to tell you when you'll get your package. Amazon Subprime. Thank you, Jim. It's Jim.
All right. Welcome to the torture chamber. Now we have a special treat for our viewers. Got a good friend Christian Frisoli here. Give some guest appearance insight on the Jets, the New York Jets. We've been longtime fans. If you recall, a couple years ago, the three of us and a bunch of other guys went to the game. Remember that?
That was a great game. Remember that asshole?
What a great time!
That gave Rob shit. I remember that.
Oh, what was that?
Fucking guy. You guys were talking to one of the cheerleaders, the Jets cheerleaders, right?
Yeah, Rob was trying to get the attention of one of the cheerleaders. And
Madeline, Mad Dog.
A season ticket holder got a little bit out of hand.
Yeah. Oh, they were playing the Browns, too. Josh McCown's team. I don't think McCown was on the team at that point.
No, but Josh Gordon had a day.
Josh Gordon. He was killing
all
the
game.
game.
You know who played all right was D. Milner, believe it or not. He like D'd him up the whole game. Yeah, it was D. Milner's only good game as a Jet.
That's
Great
true.
number 12 pick. Really good job.
Yeah, he's still on the team, right?
No, they cut him.
Anyway, Christian, so you've heard the stats. You know the team inside and out. What are your takes on the Jets fantasy wise? Realistically, realism wise, what are we thinking for 2017?
If you draft a Jets player, you're coming in dead last in your fantasy league. Okay, there is not a single relevant fantasy player on the Jets, nor is their defense relevant. Okay, lifelong Jet fan here. We are going to go 0-16 if we're lucky. If we are in one game in the fourth quarter this year, we'll be lucky. And you know what? In typical Jet fashion, I guarantee after I say this, they'll find a way to win 4 games. We'll get like the 5 pick, and then all the quarterbacks will be off the table.
And we'll blow the 5 pick.
Listen, when you get updates on your phone saying Christian Hackenberg has hit 3 reporters in practice today, you know there's a problem with the team. And Josh McCown, you don't play on 8,000 NFL teams, probably 3 teams in the Canadian Football League, and be a relevant player. The fact that we signed him, it's not even worth it. Like, so you have Petty and you have Hackenberg. The whole what's the point of getting McCown?
Who's the number one backup behind Josh McCown? Do you think it's Hackenberg hitting reporters or Bryce Petty, the dumpster fire Bryce Petty?
Well, I gotta say, Bryce Petty has a cannon. Okay, that's the only good thing. But Christian Hackenberg was a subpar Big Ten quarterback who runs the football all the time.
Yep.
So he had one good year when he had 3 pro receivers on his team. So
that's true.
The fact that McCaggan, that was him, right?
Yes.
Great second round pick when he was a 5th round grade. I mean, second round as an impact player, but that's besides the point. Back to my whole thing, you will come in dead last if you even think of drafting a Jet player in fantasy. There's no one relevant, and if you think the running backs are going to have a good year, every team's going to stack the box on them.
Well, that's what I was going to say next. What's the running back situation? So we got Bilal Powell, Matt Forte. Bilal's going 60th overall. So he's according to drafters, they're going to draft him as a flex.
He's a starter. He's a starter according to ESPN.
And Matt Forte is like a backup guy, but according to ESPN as well. But what do you take out of the running back situation here?
I'd like to know who ranked them from ESPN because that guy should lose his job. Bilal Powell, while he has value on a team like the Patriots where he's not an every down back and he can come in, get a couple home run plays. He is a good back. He wears down every single year. When you're 5'9" in a $160 soaking wet, you have no chance to be a running back in the NFL. Where the average safety outweighs you by 80 pounds.
That's true.
And he's a home run threat, but on a good team. And Matt Forte is on Social Security next year. So there's nothing to the guy has had a good career, but as you guys could tell, I'm very down on the Jets. I don't think we'll be relevant for the next decade. Tom Brady will still be playing in 10 years, apparently. So as long
we got
as
our very own Michael Rappaport over here. This is great.
It's great, right?
This is fantastic.
Listen, it is the truth. We're a long-time suffering Jet fans.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal. It's the worst kind of fan.
Listen, Jets, Nets, and Mets. Tell me which franchises run the best.
Right now the Nets, I think.
The Nets by honestly. A long shot. And the Nets...
How pathetic is that?
It's horrible.
That's terrible.
And then you look at the rest of the teams in New York. The Knicks oh, my God. Phil Jackson, he stole money from the Knicks. Stole it.
Fucking idiot. He was such a joke.
So, New York sports, the only good team we have is the Rangers.
Yeah. I'll give you that.
Yankees are
and the Yankees. Yeah, sorry. The Yankees are a team of the future. Right now, they're young. They don't have any pitching.
Middling. Yeah, middling right this year.
So, our golden years of New York sports fans are kind of behind us right now.
So Bilal Powell and Matt Forte.
Yeah, sorry to get off topic there.
No, that was a good topic.
I think we're thinking too big. The key to really surviving the season as Jets fans is to just accept small victories. I'm going to spend the entire year only watching the defense. When the Jets have the ball, I'm flipping channels. When the other team has the ball, I'm gonna log in and I'm just gonna watch Jamal Adams the whole year. I'm not even gonna watch the ball. I'm just watching what he does. That's it.
Well, we got our boy Leonard Williams and Jamal Adams.
And Leonard Williams. Yeah, I'll toggle
Williams
back and forth.
But he's gonna get double teamed every play. I mean, And Mo Wilkerson was the slowest defensive end in the league.
Oh, he's a joke.
And he gets what he get like $80 million a year ago, or was it 60? Something crazy.
60.
And they
What do we think of the defense special teams? Is that do they have fantasy relevance this year?
No.
I think the defense.
You need the offense to hold the ball for any semblance of time.
I mean, the only way you pick the Jets up is if your top 2 defenses have a bye the same week somehow, and you were the worst draft. You need to pick someone up, and then maybe if they're playing like the Cleveland Browns, maybe it's like a 3-0 game. Decent chance there, but outside of that, I can't imagine. And special teams, who's even our kicker now? Because we released Nick Folk. They released him. So
actually, who do we have?
I don't even know. Oh, it's terrible.
Shit, I'm gonna look that up. Actually,
yeah, I literally have no idea who the kicker is right now.
Let's check.
I'm really excited for the year.
They might actually have value since we can't get it into the end zone.
They might have some value for
maybe
Chandler
training camp battle to
that's
watch.
The guy. Yeah. He might get some 55-yard field goals this year, since that's the closest we'll get to the end zone. Name to watch: Chandler Catanzaro, most fantasy relevance on the Jets.
All right, so if you had to pick one Jet player, if you had to, who would you take? And you can't pick the defense. So
I gotta go Bilal Powell.
yeah,
Honestly, where Bilal Powell is going, I don't.
but
I don't
not
like
not
it,
at his
but
value.
No.
I don't think you can take him at that value. That's 60. That's a starter.
That's a starter. You need a bona fide starter at that point. I would say honestly, Ardarius Stewart, because he has the most upside out of wide receivers for me, and he's not getting drafted. So he could be a waiver wire guy in week 4, or you can draft him in your last round after you take a better kicker than you would get in your last round. I think he has some upside, but other than that, like no one for their value.
No. I mean, when was the last time? I mean, outside of the flash in the pan with Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall, and Ryan Fitzpatrick had the year of his career. And of course, the one game we need to win against the Buffalo Bills and sexy Rex Ryan.
Sexy Rex,
complete meltdown.
Got some picks there.
I was driving home from Boston, and I was listening to the thing, riding with my girlfriend, and she was sleeping. I was screaming, like absolutely top of my lungs at fucking Chan Gailey.
Oh, God. Chan Gailey.
You know what this is all leading up to? This is leading up to us going to a game and just having the worst time of our lives. But maybe the best.
You want to hear something great? So Scott and I went to the Monday night game last year. It was who was it? Jets? No, Jets Colts 21-0 after 5 minutes.
We got there. So just a little backstory here. We got there with 10 minutes left in the first quarter, and it was 21-0. 21-0.
We hadn't even sat down yet, and people were leaving the game.
The best part of that game, the highlight of that game. If the Jets have this again, I will be I will definitely be a lifelong fan. They had a guy run onto the field, 2 guys run onto the field.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
And get decked by security. So if you're watching that on Red Zone, that's the highlight of the season for the Jets. Security guards sacking some streakers.
Listen, the Jets, until we have a viable option at quarterback, will never win. The NFL is such a quarterback-driven league that until we have a half decent quarterback, we won't win a game. Or we will win a game, but you know what I mean. Like you can't win.
So let me ask you this: are we going to spend the whole year watching college football? Is that what this has come to?
Yeah.
We're just going to scout quarterbacks the whole year.
Depends on who you're a college football fan of, because I'm a Rutgers fan, and they're just as unwatchable. So,
Christian and I have also been to a Rutgers game.
We were also actually, that was a good game. No, we were both there. Well, we went separate. So the one good game, it was like New Mexico State or something.
New Mexico State. Yeah, that was better quarterback play than we'll see out of McCown this year.
All right, if you could take a Jet quarterback or a current college quarterback this year, would you take the college quarterback?
Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold from USC. I'd take him in a heartbeat.
But at his, like right now, you would take him?
Right now. I'd take him right now.
100%.
Absolutely.
Sam Darnold.
All right, I got a better one. Would you take the number 1 high school quarterback in the country over the Jet quarterback?
Honestly, because he'll have a longer
career.
Yes.
The kid from Long Island. I'd take the kid from Long Island.
Which one?
Jack Cohn.
Yeah, the kid from Long
He's going to
Island?
play at Wisconsin.
Let's go.
He's playing at Wisconsin.
What I'm saying.
I don't even know if he's going to start this year, but I'd take him over
Sounds like
Josh
a stud.
McCown this year.
Yeah, because you got him for 20 years at least. You have McCown for 2.
Right, I got an even better one. Number 1 8th grade dual threat quarterback. Do you take him?
From Long Island.
All right, I think that's where I draw the line.
5'8", $120 soaking wet. We take him.
Sean, how's Connor's arm looking? He's younger.
Yeah, Connor's got the size. He
does have the size now.
He's 6'4".
Wow, that's a good size. Can he fling a football?
To play quarterback.
Can you read
I'm talking to him right now.
Defense?
Do you have a good arm? I don't even know if he has a good arm. We don't really toss the ball around too much. He plays basketball, though. So, he could be the point guard of the offense. Maybe he'll just kind of run around like a maniac. That's pretty much what we're getting.
I heard the Jets are having open tryouts. We'll bring them.
They have replacement players. They're going to go on strike because they suck so bad.
What's that movie? What's that movie? Replacements. Yeah.
With Keanu Reeves.
Well, speaking of...
Okay, here's the question. Keanu Reeves
striking.
or a current Jets quarterback?
Keanu Reeves.
Only if it's from The Matrix.
It's like a dodge all
or
the
John
sack
Wick
lunches.
John Wick is our quarterback.
Would you take... Well, never mind. Current Brett Favre or Jets quarterback.
He had Brett
Dude,
Favre
Brett
for
is
one
yoked.
year.
I would take.
Brett's
I might
yoked.
consider Brett. He is
Dude,
huge.
he's jacked out of his mind.
I mean,
would
he
take
could
Brett.
probably still sling a football.
And he could probably send a mean dick pic still.
Should
He needs ball shave club.
Should I?
Well,
Oh, man.
while we're here, let's talk about the New England Patriots because Christian has some familiarity with them as well as one of
Excellent.
our bigger
I'm in.
rivals. Let's just
Sounds
talk.
good.
Let's go in reverse order here. Let's talk about the Patriots overall. What we think the theme of this year is going to be. Obviously, Tom Brady got some more weapons. Brandon Cooks, Dwayne Allen,
Cooks.
Gronk is a little healthier than last year. Got some Rex Burkhead types in the running back fold. What are we thinking for the New England Patriots this year as Jets?
I'll say one thing. I think all that Garoppolo hype that we had last year, I think it's just going to be quiet this year. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be no questions. I think he's just going to go to. They didn't lock him up yet, so he's just going to be a free agent, and they're probably going to let him go. If they don't lock him
Maybe
up
the Jets
early,
will.
I think Belichick will just say, you know what, I can win without a quarterback because he honestly can if he wanted to.
Yeah.
So I think that hype will be a little bit or a lot quieter this year. I think the wide receivers are going to explode this year. I think between Cooks, Edelman, Amendola, and Hogan, Brady's just going to have a humongous year. And, it's just going to be horrifying to watch, but we're going to have to sit through it.
I think he's going to torture us as he usually is. I think what they're trying to do with Cooks, obviously, is get back to that deep threat that Brady had with Randy Moss. I think Cooks is he has the wide receiver one potential.
Yes,
where
absolutely.
Where he's being drafted is like 29th overall. I think.
Yeah, it's a little high.
If he falls a little bit, that's good value. Maybe 35 to 40, like end of round 3 kind of thing. But for him to be your number one wide receiver, I think is a little steep, just because he hasn't proven himself with the Patriots. So I'm a little skeptical on where he's going, but I think he could be a top 10 guy for sure.
Here's another hot take. If you can draft a Patriot, draft them. Okay? They are going to be, like, in Little League when a team scored 10 runs in one inning? That's what the Patriots are going to do every single quarter, and they're going to have to give the ball back to the other team. That's how good they are. And you know what? You can say whatever you want about Tom Brady being the best of all time, and I think he's in the discussion, but that is such a good system there. I believe that Josh McCown would probably win 10 games there. I'm not even kidding when I say
That's
it.
saying a lot.
Bill Belichick is a genius, and
Yeah.
I hate to. And he could be the Jets coach right now. Think about that.
Yeah, he could be. He almost wasn't. He almost.
Yes, no.
Twist the knife. He's twisting the
What
knife
was it,
right now,
2
Scott.
He was hired
Cut
in
him
2
off.
days, I think it was, something crazy, and he quit. But if you look up and down the Patriots
Yeah.
roster, they're better than they were a year ago.
Yeah, they are.
Oh,
At
yeah.
almost every position.
Honestly, I think they can easily repeat again.
Brandon Cooks is going to have 15 touchdowns this year.
Yeah, he could easily.
I'm telling you,
easily have,
he
like,
is going to be
8.
a stud. And Gronk wasn't even healthy last year. That's
Yeah, no.
scary.
Oh, God.
Well,
It's just scary. They're a scary team.
Even if Gronk isn't healthy this year, I think Dwayne Allen can fill in those footsteps.
Yeah,
like
that was
Brady.
a really good pickup, actually. I mean, that's it's a typical Patriot move,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yep.
Like, just embarrassment of the riches. They just continue to get better every year, and Tom Brady hasn't aged a minute.
He's
second.
gonna be 40. Is he 40 yet?
He might be 39. this
No,
year.
dude, he eats like the superfoods
Yeah.
like exclusively. He's
yeah.
dialed in. Like
Got
he's
a body
fine.
of a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
He's in considerably. Have you guys ever seen a picture of him when he was drafted?
Yes.
He was
Oh
like
my
this
God.
fat, overweight kid, and now he looks like he's cut. Looks.
And for our listeners, if you haven't seen that, Google right now Tom Brady draft day picture, and you'll thank us later.
Yeah,
Incredible.
He's going to torture us for at least the next 5 years.
I would say he wants to play for 5 more years. Yeah. So as Jets fans, 2023 will make playoffs. Patriots 2017 make playoffs. And that team's going to be unreal. A lot of fantasy relevance there. Probably like 10 times more than the Jets.
I think
you guys
their fourth receiver probably has more fantasy
Hogan?
upside than Quincy Enunwa.
Probably does, actually.
Maybe even more than Bilal Powell. I mean, they are going to score 40 points a game.
Well, that's actually an interesting question to relate to back to like fantasy ins and outs. let's say, so we got Brandon Cooks is the wide receiver 1 on that team. Julian Edelman's 2, but they're 2 totally different skill sets, so they can really coexist there. You got Gronk and Dwayne Allen. Their third wide receiver is going to be Chris Hogan or Danny Amendola, right? Do they have more value than Quincy Enunwa on the Jets, who's the wide receiver 1? What kind of debate are we having there?
I think Hogan is probably going to be the guy that wins that job because he can play on the outside. Edelman is a beast in the slot. So you're looking at probably Cooks, Hogan, and Edelman on the field a lot together. So I think Hogan does have value because they're probably going to have to start doubling Cooks. Edelman is just going to eat up so much attention on the inside. Then you have Gronk and Dwayne Allen in there. Yeah. So Hogan just might be the guy that gets one-on-one coverage, and they just attack that. So I would not feel bad about rostering him. I think he's a good bench guy, with some upside.
Yeah, I think you wait and see, like a waiver guy, but he can potentially get like 700-800 yards.
He's a freak athlete, too.
Yeah, he is.
He's want to play lacrosse, right?
Yeah.
Look up, Google him in playing lacrosse. Is filthy. The guy is just a sick athlete.
Google that too. Patriots are just so Googleable.
The whole team.
Tom Brady's face.
I mean, we'll be tortured forever. They're just. I think Hogan is a better option. I mean, he'll get a lot of touches, and the Patriots just attack weaknesses. So you double Cooks and you double Gronk. Hogan's going to eat teams alive.
Not enough defense to cover. Yeah, I think he'll do better than Enunwa, maybe even Darius Stewart, than any Jets wide receiver.
You're playing the Patriots. Your defensive coordinator. You're not sleeping. You're having.
And we haven't even talked about the running backs. Okay, so they pick up Mike Gillislee, who honestly was
underrated.
Completely underrated last year. So in
threat.
One swoop, they make themselves better and they make the Bills worse because if LaShawn McCoy gets hurt, the Bills have pretty much nothing going for him.
Yeah,
I think Gillislee has a huge upside as well. He's really probably the best between the tackles guy in the division, which is crazy. Besides maybe Ajay. Ajay is a little bit stronger than him, but he's going to move the chains for them, and it's an embarrassment of riches. Really, it's scary how they can construct a roster and have all of their players be more relevant than all of the Jets players.
I think he had a couple 90-yard touchdown runs last year.
Who did? Jay?
No.
Oh, Gillislee?
Yeah.
He did have he had a really good yards per carry. I remember that as a backup to McCoy. But the scary part was that he was just a backup and he still had some value there.
No, I'm telling you, I picked him up for a few games last year. He had a couple games 100 yards and on 5 touches.
He did have a good one. Yeah, he did have a couple.
He's scared. And wait until they bring in 8 D-backs against the Patriots, and he goes for 90 yards on 1 carry right up the gut.
Well, that's another really value add there for Gillislee is he's the only in between the tackles guy. You got Deion Lewis and James White as the kind of the pass catching backs out of there, and even Rex Burkhead to a smaller extent. Those guys have value in PPR leagues, or if Gillislee goes down. The Patriots historically haven't had a lot of consistency with running backs, but if you look at Blunt last year, 17, 18 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, something ridiculous. Gillislee easily has that potential, so that's the ceiling. I think his floor is 800 yards and even 10 touchdowns because there's going to be so many people doubling Gronk, doubling Cooks, that it's going to open up running lanes. And that running back position is going to have a ton of value in fantasy. It's going to be underrated drafting too.
Dude, honestly, Gillislee, I'm just thinking about this now. You know who he kind of reminds me of based on those, little touches with huge gains last year? Obviously not to the same extent, but David Johnson with the Cardinals his rookie year. He just kind of was this electric player that would get the ball and just light it up. And, he didn't play enough because he had a really established guy in front of him at the time. Ellington was established, quote unquote. But, who knows how good Gillislee is? He could be a really, really good player, and we just don't know it. And I think if somebody's going to know that, it's going to be Bill Belichick. So
yeah, and I was going to say he's on the Patriots.
Ton of upside.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the last bit of that is talking about. I mean, we know Tom Brady is going to be a top 5 quarterback. We don't need to really harp on that. I think he can only get better from last year with Gronk back healthy, Dwayne Allen, and then Brandon Cooks. Kind of want to let's discuss Gronk. Because you and I, Sean, have a couple disagreements there where he's being drafted. I'm more in the mindset that he's getting drafted way too early because the last full season that he finished was 2011, and that's a stat. You could look that up. 2012 on, he's never finished a season. He's ended on the IR most of those seasons, And even when he was out there last year, he had some stinker games where he put up literally like 1 point, kind of as like a decoy guy. So to me, he's not the number one tight end overall, and 20th overall where he's going is way too early. I would say round 4 or 5, you would get him. But
boy.
what do you guys think?
I'm not crazy about drafting Gronk myself, but I will say I'm definitely higher on him than you are. I will say, again, I kind of talked about this when we talked about the positions, but if you draft Gronk and you just take like a really low end tight end 1, to pair with him, when Gronk breaks down, because at this point it's when rather than if, then you just plug in the other guy and you get maybe 8 good games of Gronk. That's immediately a better option than any other tight end outside of maybe Kelsey, Greg Olsen. Jordan Reed gets hurt a ton too. All the other guys are kind of inconsistent. So, you might as well take a shot on Gronk. I wouldn't take him in like round 1, 2, or 3. I think round 4 I'd probably take him. Maybe late round 3 I'd think about it. But again, if it pans out, he's basically a wide receiver 1 playing tight end for you. So
yeah,
that's huge upside there.
That's the upside, but the problem is with me is if you're gonna take him and then low end tight end 1 guy, like let's say Zach Ertz, right, in round 10, you're now using 2 picks in your top 10 rounds on a tight end, and you don't even know which one to play week to week. Obviously, if Gronk's hurt, you're playing Ertz. No, if Gronk's hurt, you're not playing Gronk. You're playing Ertz, obviously, but even the weeks that Gronk was out there last year, he had 2 games specifically where he was out there, and in the game plan, he was a decoy. He got 11 yards receiving, and he killed those teams that week.
That is honestly what you're talking about right now. That's really the caveat for all the Patriots is like if they do get hurt, you never know what you're getting out of them that week because again, Belichick will put up like upper body injury on the injury report.
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
have no idea what part of the body is actually hurt.
His pinky finger.
That's kind of the only downside there.
I agree, but I'm higher on Gronk than both of you guys. I've actually drafted him the last couple years. I'm a third round. I think anywhere in the third round is not a bad get for him.
I agree. I'm moving up on the third round. I think if he's your third best player, like it's a huge risk, obviously, but there's worse gambles at that stage.
I think you take him. You almost have to take Allen.
Yeah.
That's
another thing.
If you can get him in like maybe I don't know what's ESPN rank him at. I don't know.
Gronk?
No, Allen.
I don't think he's even being drafted.
Yeah, he's not getting drafted.
Okay, so there you go. I think you take him as insurance policy because the way the Patriots play, they use their tight ends all, and that's part of the reason why Gronk's made out of glass. That guy takes more hits than anyone. I don't care how big he is. You're getting hit by someone who's just as big as you running, a 4.4. You're going to get hurt.
Bennett had a huge value last year. He had 3 touchdowns in one game when Gronk went down.
That's what I'm saying.
I think this might be the only situation where you draft. If you draft Gronk, you need a handcuff. That's usually what we do with running backs. Crazy. But you need Dwayne Allen in the last round.
Yeah, I think that's true. And listen, Gronk, if you look historically, will have a couple big games a year where you're going to almost single-handedly win your fantasy week that week because Gronk had 100 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And that just blows away every other tight end. There are a couple other tight ends in the league you can draft, but I'm still high on Gronk. He's good, I think, for at least 8, 9
I'd say
games
8, at least half the year.
Yeah.
But well, that's good. We have 3 different takes on him there. I would take him round 4, not before round 4. You guys would take him around 3. But the listeners know the risk in taking a guy like Gronk. If you're going to draft Gronk, make sure you're covering all your bases. You're drafting Dwayne Allen as a handcuff.
Let me add one thing before you wrap up here.
Yeah.
Remember that this is fantasy football here. It's not live or die, and you're going to enjoy watching Gronk when he's on the field. Keep that in mind. There's
on if you have
nothing better than watching Gronk go up for a fade in the back corner and going, oh, he's got it. Done. 6 points for my team.
Very good point. That's a very good point. So at least he has entertainment value there.
Exactly.
Well, he has entertainment value in life, let's be honest. That guy is
a monster.
That guy lives the life, man.
Yeah, he really does.
If I could live a day as Rob Gronkowski, oh my God.
one last thing too about the Patriots I want to cover before we wrap up those two teams. The wide receiver to be on the lookout for is Malcolm Mitchell. So it felt like last year he was a rookie. It felt like last year all they wanted to do was get him the ball more. Malcolm Mitchell. If Hogan goes down, or if Edelman goes down, or even Cooks, they're not the most injury-proof guys. Malcolm Mitchell could step up to the plate there and have some value there. So that's a guy to keep on the lookout.
Yeah, I like that. He gained Brady's trust, which is absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, that's true.
Once you're in with him, you're in. You're set. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on him. I don't know if he's going to come out of the gate and be effective, but again, if like you said, if one of those guys goes down, he's probably one of the first guys I'm adding.
This episode of Unqualified is sponsored by the Meme Hailer. Is the sweet release of one meme at a time not enough to satisfy your thirst for relatable content? Are you counting on memes to keep you anchored in reality? The world's best scientists have come together to create a content delivery system that changes everything. Meme Hailer allows you to inhale 20 memes per second. That's 20 times the average meme you could take on a regular day. You'll never miss another meme. The meme team has created a plethora of different cartridges to meet anyone's needs. Do you need more extremely photogenic marathon runner? What about T-Sip Kermit? We've got depression memes, dark memes, Trump memes, wholesome memes. We've got a cartridge to match anyone's meme taste. There simply is no rush like the feeling of 20 fresh memes rocketing into your airways. Go pick up the Meme Hailer and change your life.
Exciting occurrence. We just had our first recurring guest, friend of the pod, Christian Frisoli, our very own Rappaport, if you will.
Love it. He was phenomenal. You guys can tell I can't even talk right now because we got so heated talking about the Jets and the Pats, our most favorite and our least favorite teams, actually.
Yep.
So
Now
we got to talk about the rest of the division. Teams that we again aren't very fond of because they usually beat us twice a year. Sometimes we split with them in the case of the Bills, but these are teams that we see a lot, so we're pretty familiar with these guys.
Yeah. So I know we said we were going to do last to first, but sorry about that. We just had a little different there. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. So just to go top down, quarterback to tight end, we have Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback. Notable running backs are Jay Ajayi, Damian Williams, and Kenyon Drake. Wide receivers Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, and Kenny Stills, and then tight end Julius Thomas, a new guy there. Let's talk about Ryan Tannehill a little bit. A couple of years ago, there was some value, and he was a little undervalued in drafts. He kind of came on late 2 years ago onto the scene. Last year, he was a drafted quarterback, but didn't have a lot of value. So this year, I can't see him having any value again. I think he's a waiver wire guy. If he does have a couple games here and there, maybe you pick him up as a bye week fill-in, but that's about it.
Yeah, he's a bye week fill-in for me. One image that just is stuck in my mind is him throwing a ball in the rain last year and having it go out of bounds perpendicular to where he was trying to throw it. It was really one of the most beautifully terrible things I've ever seen in my life. So I don't think I could trust a guy like that with my fantasy team. Again, bye week fill-in at best. He has some sneaky value with his legs, but again, just watch that GIF of him throwing the ball out of bounds, perpendicular to where he meant to throw it. Unreal. So again, if you want that guy leading your team, that's your choice.
Be our guest. Go for it. The guy he's handing off to, though, Jay Ajayi, he had a ton of hype coming out of college, but he was very injury prone, which is why he fell to the fourth round. Last year, we really saw his value and his upside. So my take on him, obviously over 1,000 yards. He was one of the top running backs in the game. Not really a highly drafted guy. He was really late in the draft last year, fantasy draft last year, but had a ton of carries, and 3 of his games were really where he got most of his points. He had 3 separate games with over 200 yards rushing in each game. To me, he was a boom or bust guy. He had some consistency in the games he didn't get over 200 yards, but to me, like a guy that you're drafting as your running back 1, there needs to be a little bit more week-to-week consistency. He can win you a game and win your league in 1 week, but there needs to be a little bit more consistency for me. So I think he's getting overdrafted a little bit, but again, the running backs that have a lot of value this year are the guys that are getting the rock, and he's getting the rock a lot.
Yeah, I think if I get him at the very end of the second round, I'll probably feel a little bit better about it. I think, again, last year I was actually pretty high on Arian Foster, who was in Miami last year, solely because I thought their offensive line was going to be really good. They kind of stole Laramie Tunsil in the draft. They have a couple other guys there that are pretty freaking solid. So I thought behind that offensive line there could be some value, especially with Tannehill being just good enough to open the defenses up vertically. So Ajayi is in a really good spot. He's got a pretty good trio of receivers around him that kind of check all the boxes as far as deep threat, possession guy, and kind of do it all guy. So he's in a very good spot. He's got a good line. He's got a serviceable quarterback. He's got 3 outside receivers around him. And again, he actually does have the ability. Clearly, he had 2 straight games of 200 yards last year in a row. And I saw shades of Marshawn Lynch in those games. I don't throw that around very easily. So I think there's a huge upside here, which is why he's getting drafted in the second round. And the downside's not super crazy. He only had, I'm looking right now, he only had one or 2 games where he didn't give you anything. There's one game where he had 19 carries for 51 yards, and there's another game where he had 6 carries for 33 yards, but he actually got in the end zone that week, I'm pretty sure. So, again, there's a relatively sneaky floor here with him because he is so tough and so good between the tackles. I think the touchdown potential is a little bit higher than what it was last year. Last year, he only put the ball in the end zone 8 times. I think he could top that this year.
Yeah, and if you think about his floor, that's a really good point because if you take away the 2 worst games and the 2 best games, he still had a really high floor. He still is getting the rock a ton. The only knock on him that I can think of is week-to-week consistency, which I think he'll get better at with a full offseason as the starter, as the de facto guy. The other thing is that's kind of a knock against him is he doesn't catch it that often. And we see running backs do have value without catching it. Marshawn Lynch didn't really. Even Adrian Peterson didn't really in his prime. So he could still have value there, but I think that's one that could vault him into the top 5 discussion, whereas now he's a top 10 guy, I think, but maybe not like the top 1 or 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a report, by I think it was ESPN. Here it is. ESPN's James Walker reporting that he's focusing on improving his pass catching skills.
Right.
Everybody talks about stuff like that in the offseason. You really can't believe it till you see it. That's what I, say as far as running backs are concerned. There's a great saying. I believe it's Mike Lombardi from FS1 said it, but I could be wrong. He says everybody has a good offseason. You get all this hype about, he's looking great. He's in the best shape of his life. They say that about every single player. So you really got to see, you really got to go based off what you see. And what we saw last year was this guy's great between the tackles. He's explosive, but again, he's not much of a threat in the passing game. So if maybe he'll surprise some guys this year, but don't trust that just because the reporters are saying it.
Yeah, and Damian Williams, we're not really drafting him as a handcuff guy, right? Jay Ajayi is a pretty sturdy guy.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. So we got Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker as the notable guys. Kenny Stills is really there to open up that field for those other guys. Devontae Parker, a ton of sleeper potential last year and really didn't deliver on any of it. So I actually think he might be undervalued this offseason. The upside is still there. He's had a full offseason again to get healthy. Jarvis Landry, I think, will still get at least 100 catches and have a really immense PPR value. But this wide receiver tandem is actually one of the better ones. But I think Jarvis Landry will still be wide receiver 2 or high-end flex guy. Devontae Parker could have some valuable games there, here and there.
Yeah, I think Devontae Parker is one of my favorite type of players in fantasy, which is the post-hype sleeper. I think he's definitely got a lot of value this year. He does everything. He's a freak athlete, great hands. He's a little inconsistent with drops, but he does have great hands. Part of that's probably a focus thing. Landry, on the other hand, I think is getting overdrafted a little bit. I'm not super excited about him being my 3rd or 4th best player on my team. I think He's great after the catch. He catches a ton of balls, but he doesn't catch the ball far enough away from the line of scrimmage to really be a wide receiver one. So if he's my fourth best player, yeah, he's solid, but he kind of lowers the ceiling of your team because, as far as, what he's done last year, it hasn't been anything spectacular. Don't get me wrong, he's a spectacular football player. If he was if he was on the Jets, I'd be watching him every week because he's that good and he's that exciting. But unless you're in a PPR league, I wouldn't go crazy for this guy. He's getting overdrafted in my opinion. PPR, he's if he's pretty good to take in that spot. But
I agree.
Don't go nuts for him.
Jarvis Landry overdrafted, Devontae Parker possibly underdrafted. Tight end position, Julius Thomas, new on the team. Again, offseason reports, they could say anything they want, but apparently he's had terrible chemistry with Tannehill. They're just not connecting on anything. I think this is he could be a sleeper, but I think it's a wait and see guy, maybe a bye-week fill-in. He could have a couple of good games there, but even in Denver a couple years ago, he was really touchdown dependent and always injured as well. So I think a plug and wait and see guy.
Yeah, let me add this about the whole reporting thing. I think if a reporter says they have terrible chemistry, they probably have terrible chemistry.
I agree.
I remember last year, I was all about DeAndre Hopkins in Houston. I bought into the Brock hype because the reporters bought into the Brock hype, and they said they had great chemistry. Clearly, they didn't. Right. So if someone's saying they got terrible chemistry, they probably do. I'm not, again, once you get past the top tight ends and even the mid-tier tight ends, you're really just looking for touchdowns, which is where Julius Thomas makes, 90% of his fantasy value. So maybe if, Parker is having trouble, making an impact, Landry's not getting the ball in the red zone, and, Stills is not really a red zone threat. Someone's going to have to catch the ball in the red zone at some point. You can't give the ball to Ajayi every single time. So maybe Thomas has value there. But again, that's it's too much variance week to week. So maybe he could be a sleeper because people kind of forget about him. But again, he's someone that I'm not too excited about. I think as a whole, this team, I'm excited about Jay Ajayi and I'm excited about Devontae Parker. I think Landry I love as a player, but I think he's getting drafted too high. Those are the three big guys that I'm looking at from this team.
All right, moving along to the Buffalo Bills. Pretty middling team in the NFL last year. I think that's going to stay the same, but let's break down the quarterback. We know it's Tyrod Taylor, same as last year. Interesting news coming out of the Bills camp and the NFL, to be honest, with Sammy Watkins going to the Rams. I think that really affects Tyrod Taylor this upcoming year.
Yeah, I think even before Watkins got traded, he was more of a fantasy backup with, obviously some nice upside. But without Watkins, I'm not excited about this guy too much. I think he does offer you some value with his legs, but it's tough to look at him as anything more than a QB2.
Yeah, I think the best place for him is a 2-quarterback league where he's your second quarterback, and even then you need a good backup too. Before this happened, consistently he was getting 3,000 yards passing and 500 yards rushing over the last couple of years. So he was a very consistent player, but I think he's due for a downgrade. I'm not taking him as a starter, and I'm probably even staying away from him in standard leagues, even as a backup. All right, moving along to LaShawn McCoy, the running back there. Honestly, the move of Sammy Watkins to the Rams also affects LaShawn McCoy. I think there's a lot more pressure on him now. Obviously, he's a top flight running back 1, and I think that stays the same, but he might score a few less points now without Watkins, blowing the top off of defenses.
Yeah, we saw LaShawn McCoy play without Watkins last year and have a really good year. I think he finished as the number 3 running back last year. However, I think eventually, it's going to catch up to him that they don't have a guy that's going to really open up the field for him. So I think, again, he's still a top flight running back 1 for me, but, as, just the centerpiece of their offense. But I'm a little more hesitant to take him, just knowing that Watkins isn't going to be there this year.
Yeah, I think his draft position is not going to change too much. The guy that I would be on the lookout for is Jonathan Williams, his backup. LaShawn McCoy is 29 this year. He hasn't really shown big signs of slowing down, but it's going to come soon. Running backs don't really last in this league past 30. So Jonathan Williams as his backup. We saw Mike Gillislee have some value last year. I think you need to handcuff McCoy with Jonathan Williams, or at least think about it pretty seriously in the last couple of rounds of your draft.
Yeah, I think the one thing to keep in mind with McCoy is there's very few players that are more fun to watch in the NFL than this guy, especially when he's firing on all cylinders. So again, for me, I agree with you. I think he's still a first-round talent for me. I think he's a really, really good running back, and I think he is an injury risk, but who isn't at the running back position? So I think he's definitely someone that you can feel pretty good about as your running back one, and that's saying a lot in today's day and age.
Yeah, moving on to that wide receiver position. So Sammy Watkins got traded to the Los Angeles Rams. We'll talk about him on another separate episode. But for now, there's a huge vacuum in that wide receiver position. They drafted Zay Jones in the second round of their draft this year. They have Andre Holmes as well, who's perennial backup, basically. They did just pick up Anquan Bolden pretty recently in August. And they also have Jordan Matthews, who's formerly with the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot going on. No talent as good as Sammy Watkins. I don't know what to make of it, but what do you think right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at Matthews and you look at Anquan Bolden. These guys play very similar styles of football. They're both big, physical inside receivers. So, I don't know who I pick out of those two. I think obviously Matthews was traded for a reason, so I think he is the kind of de facto number one target on this team, kind of like he was with the Eagles a couple years ago. But,
or even last year.
Exactly, but the guy I'm most excited about here is Zay Jones. I just want to see what this guy has to offer because somebody has to stretch the field for this team, and I think he has a shot to do it. I think we're going to know pretty soon. He's going to kind of be thrown into the fire, I think, because outside of Andre Holmes, I don't know which one of Bolden or Matthews is going to play on the outside. So Zay Jones is definitely a guy that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, Zay Jones, I mean, you don't really want to rely on a rookie wide receiver, but I think he has the most upside out of this team. We kind of know what Jordan Matthews can do at this stage in his career. He's been around for a couple of years. You're probably looking at 900 yards and like 7 touchdowns out of Matthews. And, I mean, that's not bad value. He's probably going to be in the 25 to 40 wide receiver range, so maybe a late-round flyer. But Zay Jones, I think, would probably go later and probably deserves more praise than Jordan Matthews this year upcoming. Tight end position, we don't have to talk too much about it. Charles Clay is their starter, but they've never really thrown to tight ends, so not much to talk about in terms of fantasy. He's a bye-week fill-in at best.
Yeah, I think the only interesting thing that I'm now thinking of with Charles Clay is they went out and traded for him and don't use him enough. So I'm kind of worried now that I'm thinking about this.
It's kind of weird.
They may not use Matthews as much as they should either. That's definitely something to keep in mind. I don't know what their thought process is, and with those moves. So hopefully Matthews has a little bit more involvement than Charles Clay typically does.
Yeah. In terms of biggest bust potential for this team now, it has to be LaShawn McCoy. We pretty much know Tyrod Taylor is going to take a hit without Sammy Watkins, but LaShawn McCoy, round one guy, there's no way but down for him. I think he'll still do fine, but he has the biggest bust potential. In terms of sleeper, I would say Zay Jones for sure. I think he was a huge talent coming out of college, so he has the biggest upside. This team is due for a downgrade, but they're not going to be as bad as the New York Jets in the AFC East, but I think they're probably looking at 6-10 or 7-9 season with all the losses they've had.
Yeah, I agree. It pains me to say, but I think Shady McCoy is definitely the biggest bust potential here. I'm not going to get into that too much because I just don't want it to happen. The biggest surprise, however, I agree with you on Zay Jones. I think, like I mentioned before, somebody's going to have to stretch the field for these guys. Hopefully it's Zay Jones because otherwise McCoy and the rest of this offense is going to have a hard time getting things going. I agree with you on the record. I think 6-10 is probably right about where they're going to end up. They do get to play the Jets twice a year, which is great. For them at least, not for us. But again, I think 6-10, maybe even 5-11. I think they're going to have a really hard time coping with the loss of Sammy Watkins, who I know they didn't have last year, but they were really counting on him this year, I think. So, again, hopefully they can kind of make something out of nothing, but, it's really going to come down to can McCoy stay healthy and carry this offense. So, even with that happening, I don't see them going above 500 this year. All right, what do we got next on tap? I think our next pod is going to be an NFC East preview and overview. Again, a division that, with a lot of friends that are Giants fans is pretty near and dear to our heart.
Might have another guest appearance there. You never know. Yep.
Yeah, we might have another friend of the pod on, and, we thank you guys for listening.
Well, see you next week.
Well, see you later.